Good morning. It is with great pleasure this morning on this Thursday Thoughts that our guest is somebody that I'm going to be honest, I've tried to get for some time now, but because of the demands of the season and obviously of the church, that it's been hard. It's been hard to secure this time, but I really want to thank Pastor Richard for being our guest on Thursday Thoughts. Richard, how are you doing today?
Hello, everybody. It's good to be here.
Um, Richard, let's talk a little bit. I think that as I was talking to Zachary and telling him that you're the guest this week on Thursday Thoughts, his initial reaction was, "What? Everybody knows Uncle Richard." And I said, "Do they? Do they? They know who he is, but how many have had?" Sort of extensive personal conversations. So we're going to hope that through this time today, people will get to know you a little bit. Everyone knows who you are. There's no doubt about that. But how much do they know maybe about you and feel like they have a personal connection with you? So let's start with this, Richard.
Okay.
How long have you been a part of CCGC?
Well, since 92,
1992. And when you came in
1992.
1992,
Right.
were you a pastor?
No, no, no. At the time, we just came as a regular believer. And then also, by the way, the first time we came to this church, the church was closed.
The church was closed.
It was a retreat weekend. So the entire church on campus was shut down. So we came with a closed door.
But you
But
came
fortunately,
back.
yeah, we came back the next week. Well, there's a notice on the door saying that because of the retreat, there's no service today.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was a very interesting and unique experience, first experience with the CCGC.
Now, at that time in 92, you had your whole family, all three kids?
Yeah, we moved to Concord in 86, and then we also moved to Walnut Creek 93. So just right about that time, we decided to join the more of a Chinese ethnic church. Yeah,
Prior to that, where were you going?
we were at Clayton Valley, Clayton's Baptist Church.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just finishing out the timeline, before 86, where were you physically located?
Well, we lived in San Francisco for 9 years, in Sunset area.
Okay.
Yeah, and then before that, well, we came from Taiwan, 1977.
So you and Auntie Jocelyn, and how many kids in 1977 came from Taiwan? Was your first son born at that time?
No, no, no. All three of them born here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just really quickly, we'll get the background information. Can you tell me a little bit about your three kids?
Well, the oldest Albert, he's now in Taiwan. He's he worked for the World Vision for quite a while, but then for the last few years, he basically just become a independent consultant, primarily for World Vision and some also other jobs. And he makes Taipei his permanent home now.
Hmm.
He likes the Asian culture and then the working environment there. My second son, David, he and his family is in. Albert got married just 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They have a dog, and then my second son, David, in Monrovia, near Pasadena, probably, and he and Sharon have three kids. So I have three
Mm-hmm.
grandkids, two also two boys and a girl. Um,
Yeah, that's right.
and yeah, and then David's primarily in the tech job.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter Felicia, she's teaches Conquer High. She still lives with us. And Albert is pretty easygoing. He's a very relaxed, and he's very much into marathon, into this long distance sports. And so do his wife Mac. And David is my computer help desk.
He's your IT desk.
My IT desk, my
Mhm.
IT's help desk, and then so Felicia is my gardening teacher.
Okay. She teaches you
Yeah,
because I
I
know that
I
you have a pretty green thumb yourself.
I have some backgrounds. My college years I did, but she's the expert in the house.
So, okay, great. So three kids, three grandkids. You came from Taiwan. Were you married when you came from Taiwan?
Yeah.
Okay. And considering that you were already an adult when you came to the United States, when I first met you, one of the first things that stood out to me was how well you speak English. Okay, and it's not
Oh.
a joke. Just very quickly, Richard and I, we met in a class in seminary, and that class had 11 students. Other than myself, there were five Caucasian students and five overseas born Chinese students, just like Richard, same age, same demographic, very similar from Taiwan. But your English was way better than the other four guys. I
Well,
mean, not
thank
even
you.
close.
Mhm.
How, and I always wondered how that came to be. How is that possible? They're all here in the same length of time. And my father had been in this country longer than you, but spoke poor English than you.
Well, this is probably one of the backgrounds of about myself that not too many people know. Even though I was born and raised in Taiwan, but because of my father's background, he spoke very excellent English, and his job is actually official interpreter in with the Chinese Air Force. So he's stationed actually in the only international airport in Taipei at the time. So during the 50s and 60s and even the early 70s, whenever there's a foreign dignitary comes in, foreign visitor comes through the airport, my father is the liaison officer. He's with the Air Force. He grew up in Hong Kong, and he received the British education system, so he spoke very well on English. And then because of his position as the translator, he also being the liaison officer between the Chinese Air Force and the U.S. Air Force stationed in Taiwan at the time. So in our house, on our as soon as long as my father's at home, our radio is always on, and it's always tuned to the armed force radio station. So it's like as long as there are people in the house, all day long, all we listen to is English music, the 50s, 60s music, um, the news reporting, whatever is all. So I grew up in a hearing English environment,
You
and
see,
then you
that's
know
weird.
that
I grew
speaking.
up with Chinese news on the TV, and my Mandarin was not very good from that. But you actually paid attention.
Well, of course, then my father also played a very significant role. He basically forced us to learn English
Hmm.
from the very early on. So by the time I went into uh, uh, middle school, when other people, just other students, just beginning to learn ABC, I was already way ahead of them. So I've always been the school representative to engage in some kind of a English reading contest or English debate contest, whatever. I'm always the school representative. So I even got more opportunity to do that.
Yeah,
So
I
there's
can.
no secret. I'm not a language talent or whatever.
Oh, I
It's just
disagree.
my background.
I disagree. Speaking of language, maybe one thing that will surprise many people. Can you tell us? I already know the answer to this. What would you consider your first language?
Oh, still Chinese, of
Oh,
course.
no, I understand. Which dialect?
Oh, my first dialect,
Your first dialect.
Cantonese.
Say it again.
Cantonese.
Cantonese.
Yes.
I think that there are a lot of people who are watching this who are particularly in the English ministry, American-born Chinese from a Cantonese family that would be very proud to know that our pastor here, our lead pastor, is Cantonese background. has a Cantonese background, but we don't hear you speak it very often.
Well, not too many opportunities though, right?
Yeah. Um, that's fantastic. That is something that I know that obviously Theo is Cantonese. Have you ever spoken to Theo in Cantonese?
Uh, yeah, just a few sentences, you
Yeah,
know.
see, if I had the power to speak Cantonese, I would do it just to mess around and have fun. That it seems
All
like a
right.
very, it seems like a club, particularly in a church with a bilingual Mandarin speaking church. If you
Mhm.
can speak Cantonese, there's almost like a camaraderie amongst those folks, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
yeah. That's a part of the that's a special culture, especially from people from Hong Kong.
Yeah,
They have that kind of a closeness.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when you came to the U.S. with already having a very strong English skill in your bag, what was your job? What did you do before you became a pastor?
Mostly in banking. I started out as a teller actually in Chinatown, San Francisco Chinatown.
Hmm.
And so from teller to operations and then to credit departments and then eventually in mortgage lending and finally basically just mortgage banking. And then from there on, I went into the corporate finance. And later on, and before I started the seminary training for about 7, 8 years, I worked for a private company and as a CFO. So basically, my secular career is in the finance area.
And so you have a career in banking and finance, and somewhere along the way, you had the inkling, the notion, the call, we could even call it, um, to begin to pursue pastoral ministry training. Can you walk us through that process?
Well, that's a long process. It started off pretty much in the let me see, in the mid '80s actually, mid '80s. At the time, I was serving in the church in San Francisco. It's called Holy Word Church, and on along 19th Avenue. There was an English pastor there, young, very young, and very energetic young pastor, and he encouraged me to take some seminary classes, and because he saw something that I was something with potential in his words, so he encouraged me to take some classes. I did. I took classes in this San Francisco Theological Seminary. Is an extreme fundamental seminary. I took the 6 a.m. class, six
Wow.
to eight, 6 to 8 a.m. and then go to work. I
Wow.
did that for about year and a half, but then the school is just too rigid.
Hmm.
They're they do not. For instance, one of the teaching is that um, women cannot wear pants to come to church for
Hmm.
service.
Hmm.
Men cannot wear shorts. Um, things like that. And then guitar
That
is
would,
forbidden.
that would be
Yeah,
a problem at CCGC for some people.
yeah. Guitar is forbidden. Drum is
Guitar is
forbidden.
forbidden.
Yes. So that kind of a teaching is just basically just got to. Enough is enough. So
Yeah.
I just sort of walked away. And then and then in the late '80s, again, a sense of God's call come through the teaching of a pastor at a time, Clayton Valley Baptist Church. Before we came to CCGC, our family, especially because we went there because of the kids can join the Awana program,
Hmm.
and my wife Jocelyn enjoyed being part of their choir. So it's even though there's only a few Asian families in a relatively good sized church, but then the pastor's teaching is an expository preaching style. They have two services, one in the morning, one in the evening, and the evening is more geared to teaching
Hmm.
word. And I thoroughly enjoyed his teaching. And so it was through his preaching and then teaching make me begin to see this is something there's a longing in me. Just this is something I want to do. This is something I desire to do for for the rest of my life. So that's kind of a sense just gradually came on. But then it still took a long time before I finally decided, okay, this is the way to go. So from the late 80s and early 90s all the way to 96, I finally quit my job and started to take some classes at the Gray School of Theology and Ministry, where Dr. Fox was teaching at the time.
This is
I
in
took
Pleasant Hill.
Pleasant Hill, right. I took classes there for about 2 years before I went into Western. That's where I met you.
Hmm. So you started at Western in 1998 in the
Right.
MDiv program.
Yeah.
Um, and at what point did you transition into being one of the pastoral staff at CCGC?
Uh, 98. As soon
98.
as I started, yeah, as soon as I started the seminary training, the church at the time decided just to call me to shepherd the English speaking congregation. But at that time, primarily just the youth having a Sunday morning worship,
Hmm.
and a few adults, and then a few adults from the Chinese congregation to come over to help.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So that was 1988, almost 23 years ago that
Yeah.
this happened. Yeah.
Hmm.
We only have a couple more minutes here, but I wanted to ask you, you have been we don't call you, and just by way of clarification, we don't refer to you as our senior pastor in our church structure. We don't officially have a senior pastor. However, you are the chair of the pastoral council. And
Hmm.
as the chair of the pastoral council, we would say that you sort of act like a senior pastor in that senior pastor function. You've been in this role for a long time now, and overall at our church for a long time. And this is a loaded question, okay? So just take a moment. What has been the biggest difference from the time you started to where we are today? You've been here almost 30 years and have seen this church change and evolve and grow all that time. What's been the biggest change in that time?
Well, that's actually a very easy question to
Hmm.
answer. Is the leadership team? I would say within the team that you are probably one of the most important factor as
Hmm.
well. Um, be, be, uh, when we first Before we started the pastoral council structure, it basically just Pastor Chu and me, and just a senior pastor, and then I was just working under his supervision to take care of the English speaking ministry. So it's just one pastor uh, overseeing the whole church. But then gradually, since 2004, I think we gradually built up this pastoral leadership team, and that is the primary changes. And then how we conduct the church activities, and how we plan, and how we look into the future through the team is just tremendous assets.
Hmm.
And I would say, among the team, again, I cannot emphasize more than this is, you are also the one of the pivotal factors
Hmm.
in making this whole team mature. And so I can very confidently leave the entire English ministry in your hand. That's
Yeah,
the biggest
that
difference.
that's a daunting task, but thank you.
Uh-huh.
While while we're trading compliments, let me also say then that as I have been a part of bilingual churches my entire life, and my pastoral network of friends of mine who serve in churches, most of them are also serve in bilingual churches. Um, Bilingual churches, one of the biggest struggles of bilingual churches is the disconnect between the leadership on both sides.
Mhm.
That it is very tough for the overseas born Chinese pastor to really understand the needs and the changes and the rhythm of the English ministry in their own church. And as a result, it it does lead many times to some frustration on the
Mhm.
English side.
I see
Pe-
that too. Mhm.
People have asked me before, what can we do to help build our English ministry and to help retain adults? And in the back of my mind, I don't always say it because it'll hurt their feelings, but I'll tell them, you won't be able to copy what we do at CCGC because you don't have Richard as your Chinese pastor. It is, I can't say it enough that if there is any human responsibility, and again, we understand this, right? We need to couch these terms. God is the one who changes and grows and molds the church. But if there's any human responsibility to how our English ministry has developed, from the Chinese side and from the chair of the pastoral council, nobody influences it more than you. In terms of having that attitude, I think the language is a part of it. I think it's the understanding of the needs of the English ministry, how the needs may be slightly different, maybe slightly skewed from the Chinese ministry, and that's okay to you. And that to me is amazing. Um, so thank you for doing that and being a part of that. Makes it a lot easier for us to do what we need to do.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, we're running over time here, but this is important because I think a lot of people would like to hear more from you. You talked about the changes in the leadership of our church, and my last question for you. Okay, today is February of 2021. In February of 2031, if you
Mm.
were to guess, what does this church look like?
Well, that is a loaded questions. Well,
They don't pay me the big bucks to ask the softball questions here. Okay.
well, actually, this is something that I have to think through all the years that there's the same questions I've been asking my. One of the early anxiety of going into ministry is to how do I handle the expectation of growth, expectation of performance. How do I handle the expectations of results, right? And I just have to constantly remind myself and to meditate on what Jesus said, that a farmer goes out and sows seeds in the field, and then he goes sleep and rest over the night, and then the crop just grow by itself, and then the earth will just produce its own fruits. And then this farmer doesn't really understand what's going on. And also, Paul's writing to the Corinthian church, Apollos. And I planted, Apollos watered, God gave the growth. So I, on the one hand, we do plan, but on the other hand, it's all in God's hand. What we need to do is just plan well, water in time, not too much, not too little. Take the weed out, fertilize it, just do the regular gardening work, and then God will give the growth. And then I certainly hope by 10 years from now, the church is even more vibrant spiritually. Um, I'm not too much into numbers, but I really want to see most of our members or people who are growing up here would grow a deeper relationship with the Lord themselves.
Yeah.
And that's and how they and it shows in how they interact with one another, and in genuine love, acceptance, and respect. And then that's probably, um, as far as where we're located, what's the physical facilities, and the number wise, I I leave that in the hands of God.
In a few months' time, if we're still doing these Thursday thoughts, we're going to have you come back, because what you just said there, a lot of people look to the senior pastor of a church almost like the CEO of a company, and the CEO of a company is supposed to have a plan. is supposed to have a vision. And it's not that you don't have a vision for what we're going to be like in 10 years, but your vision is to just stay the course, to pull the weeds, to water the plants, to till the soil, to make sure that your crops are as healthy as possible. And whatever comes, comes. And I
Mhm.
think that this is yet again another area where I personally am just so appreciative. There is no, we're going to do X, Y, and Z in 10 years. I think sometimes people want that. And I think it's
Mhm.
because they mistake a senior pastor with a CEO. And also because there are a lot of senior pastors who will make statements and claims and cast vision like that, which to me is not what we're supposed to be doing. So I appreciate that answer very much. I didn't prompt you on that question. It was a loaded question. We're here right alongside you, watering and tilling and pulling weeds and doing what we can. And we so much appreciate we appreciate your time this morning, but we appreciate
My
you
pleasure. Yeah.
and your place in our church. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining us today for this edition of Thursday Thoughts. We hope that you had a chance to hear from, again, the chair of our pastoral council, Richard. Some of you know him as Uncle Richard. Again, I oscillate real quickly between Uncle Richard and Richard. When I met him, we were classmates. He was Richard, and then everyone calls him Uncle Richard. So yeah, I had to again adjust my verbiage. But we hope that you enjoyed listening to him and hearing about him and as he helps to lead our church. Thanks again. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye.
Take care,
And
Richard.
also, Happy New Year.
All right, you too.
Mm.